Ihr Lieben, herzlich willkommen zu deinem Lieblingspodcast, dem Bewohnerfrei-Podcast. Ich habe heute einen ganz besonderen Gast, auf den ich mich seit Wochen oder Monaten freue. Und er ist einer derjenigen, der ein Buch geschrieben hat, was mich sehr bewegt hat. Und das Buch heißt Gespräche mit Gott. Und wir sprechen heute mit Neale Donald Walsch. Und ich werde jetzt gleich auf Englisch wechseln. Das Interview wird auf Englisch sein. Aber vorher möchte ich euch ein paar Dinge über ihn sagen. Er hat das Buch geschrieben, was in 37 Ländern übersetzt wurde. Hat seine neueste Arbeit hat ihn an die Stufen von Machu Picchu nach Japan gebracht. And now I will continue into English and will do the introduction of Neale Donald Walsch in English. My guest for today is a modern-day spiritual messenger whose words continue to touch the world in profound ways. By the way, his book has touched my life and the life of my wife, and we even read it to the kids. In German, it's called Gespräche mit Gott. That's my favorite one, but we're going to talk about your new book as well, which I have almost finished. We will come to that later. With an early interest in religion and the deeply felt connection to spirituality, Neale spent the majority of his life thriving professionally, yet searching for spiritual meaning before experiencing his now famous conversation with God. Neale has written 29 books, unbelievable. I have 3, he wrote 29, which are published in 37 languages, unbelievable. So his newest book, which we will also talk about today, among other things, is The God Solution. It invites humanity to embrace a new global ethic based on the refined and clarified definition of God. Neale's work has taken him from the steps of Machu Picchu in Peru to the steps of the Shinto shrines of Japan, from the Red Square in Moscow to St. Peter's Square in the Vatican City, to Tiananmen Square. Oh, in China, I was there also. And everywhere he has gone. From South America, he works all over the world, and he has so many insights that we would like to share with you today. So Neale, I could continue with the introduction for an hour. Thank you so much for being here. Guten Morgen, und wie geht es Ihnen heute Morgen?
Mir geht es wunderbar, danke.
So you had German at school, is that correct?
Yes, for 3 years, and I was really quite good at it, but that was many, many years ago, probably 60, 70 years ago. But at the time, I really loved it, and I felt like, honestly, that I had come from your wonderful place in the world. I really felt like I had maybe a prior life or something there, because I took to the language so fast. The teachers really couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So, and whenever I come back to Germany in the old days when we could travel, and I've been there many times, the language would come back to me very quickly. So I still remember a phrase or two. But thank you for having me with you today. It's lovely to be here with you.
It's a very, very big honor. And you just put the words in. Do you believe that former lives exist? Does something like this exist?
Yes, I do. I have no question in my mind. I could be wrong, of course, about all of this, but it seems very clear to me. And I was told in my conversations with God that we live many, many physical lifetimes through all eternity, that life never really ends. We simply move from the physical to the metaphysical, back to the physical, back to the metaphysical, if you please, in a never-ending revolving process that allows us to express and experience our true identity. So yes, I do believe that we have had many, many lifetimes, and I think that some people actually have memories of those lifetimes. I've heard of people who can tell you exactly what a street looks like, or what buildings are there, or where the trees are on a particular avenue, and they go back there years later to they've never been there in this lifetime, but they go back to that place, and sure enough, everything is exactly as they described it. So how could they know? How could they know something like that? So, and when I was in Hamburg, I've been to Hamburg several times, or Hamburg, as you insist on calling it. But when I was in Hamburg, it felt like I had come home. And so it actually brought tears to my eyes. I would walk down the street and I would say to my wife, I feel like I've been here before.
Are these the moments where we have the connection to what's bigger than us? These moments that just overwhelm us?
Yes, I think so. These are the times when we escape our mind, when we escape the limitations of the mind. See, the mind wants to insist that this is all nonsense, that this couldn't possibly happen, that this, you're just making it all up. So because the mind is working with very limited data. The mind only has the information, the data that it has gathered during this particular lifetime. Whereas your soul has all the information from all of your lifetimes. It's stored all of that data inside of you. So it's not surprising that you might have a flash of a memory of a previous lifetime, or, for instance, be able to know things that you couldn't possibly know given your experience in this lifetime. Child prodigies, for instance, who sit down at the piano at the age of 7 and start playing Mozart as if they've been playing it all of their life. Yeah. And we ask ourselves, how can they possibly do that? But they have a memory from a previous lifetime. And there's a young girl in the United States who paints like Rembrandt. And when I first heard of her, she was 9. Now she's, I think, 16 or 17.
I heard about her.
Yes. Her paintings sell for thousands and thousands of dollars. Yeah. And everyone is wondering, how is it possible? Because she has never taken one class, not one class in art. But she just sits down in front of a canvas and she paints like Rembrandt.
I have a friend, she's originally from Turkey, and when she was a young girl, she always ran away and she wanted to go home. And I, for example, my spiritual place is Brazil. I picked up the language within weeks, and I couldn't understand why. And when I worked as a flight attendant for many years, and Brazilian guests said, I have a northern Brazilian accent, where I'm like,
my goodness, my goodness.
Well, that's pretty weird. But yeah, I mean, as you said, our mind tries to understand, but maybe the connection that you speak about in your books, in your latest book, where we talk about a little later, but especially in your most famous book, where you got the first connection, or it was literally a talk, right? I mean, where you started to have the conversation.
It was a dialogue, a two-way dialogue, question, answer, question, answer. Yes, it was a talk. It was a conversation. And I was told in that conversation, Tobias, I was told, your life will never make sense to your mind. Don't try to figure it out with your mind, because, as I said, your mind has very limited data. Even if you're an old person, as I am, I'm an older guy, but even for someone who's lived as long as I have lived, and I've lived a long time, as you can see from this gray hair.
You look very good.
Thank you. I feel very healthy for my age. But even older people, we have very limited data, only the information that we have drawn in since when we were in utero, just before we were born. And but the soul, as I said, holds the data from all eternity. So your life will not make sense to your mind. You don't even try to figure it out with your mind. But if you can bridge the gap, if you can make the pathway to your soul, and take that pathway, suddenly you will come upon wisdom and clarity that you never imagined you could have before. And that's what happened to me in my conversations with God. And it occurs with many, many people. I'm certainly not the only one.
Were you scared when it started?
At first I was.
You remember where you were?
Yes, I was in a little house that I was renting, a very small little cottage that I was renting, because I didn't have any money, and I was out of work, and I woke up in the middle of the night, feeling angry that life was treating me the way life was treating me. And I wound up sitting on the sofa, sitting on the couch in the living room, and there was a yellow legal pad, a tablet uh, on the coffee table. So I picked it up and I started writing an angry letter to God. What does it take to make life work? Why is life being this way to me? And I had broken my neck in an automobile accident, so I was lucky to be alive. But I just didn't understand why it was one thing after the other, one struggle after the other. So I wrote this very angry letter to God. I don't know who I thought I was writing to, but I was just writing, "Dear God, what's going on here? I don't understand."
Do you
Uh,
remember what was your construct of God before you had the first
well,
conversation?
Yes, I was born in a very Catholic family, so I was a member of the Roman Catholic tradition. Although at that time in my life, I was not what anyone would call a practicing Catholic, but that was my childhood background. So my idea of God was, a big guy in the sky who kind of runs things, and
White hair.
yeah, yeah, exactly, and maybe even glasses, who knows,
Yeah.
and
And a
and
white shirt.
yeah, precisely. So I didn't really have a deep understanding of who and what God was, but I did think that there is a higher power. I did think that, and what's interesting, Tobias, surveys show that even today, they've taken surveys around the world recently in the past 4 years, and 8 out of 10 people
Mhm.
believe that there is a higher power. But we can't agree
Hmm.
on what the higher power is or what it wants or what it requires or how it works. But
Or
we
looks.
most of us do agree that there's something more going on here, more than meets the eye.
Mhm.
Or as Shakespeare put it so wonderfully in one of his plays, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
Yes, it's true. But as you said, when you were raised Roman Catholic, there's a certain picture of God that the church gives you, and it's kind of like you take it or leave it. And when you had the first contact in that room where you wrote the angry letter, um, how how was that? I mean, compared to what you believed it should be,
Well,
or
of course, it was completely different. It was a feeling that overcame me. I felt filled in a miraculous way with love. And that's the only way I could explain it. I felt filled with love the way I must have felt in the first moments in my mother's arms, just filled with love and caring. And I remember that it brought tears to my eyes. And I sat there and I thought to myself, I don't even know why I'm crying. Why am I crying? Except that I was feeling this presence,
Mhm,
the presence of, I would now say, the presence of divinity,
mhm,
which I want to make clear exists in all of us. I was told very directly that the presence of divinity is experienced and placed within every sentient being in the universe. So I'm not the only person who's been able to have conversations with God, but I'm one of the few who have said it out loud and admitted it in public because we are taught by our religions. Speaking of religion, we are taught by our religions, all religions, not just the Catholic Church, but all religions teach us no, don't try to pretend that God is talking directly to you. That's blasphemy.
mhm.
That's heresy.
Yes, yeah.
That's apostasy. That's a very serious offense against, what our religion teaches. So religion teaches us that God is something over there, way, way over there, and we're down here and we're separate, and there's no connection between. We can pray to God, but God would not speak directly to us, unless maybe you're the Pope. Maybe God talks to the Pope.
Mm.
Maybe.
Or in
But
former times through priests or whoever, yeah. But it's
yes,
in every
but
one of us.
only very special people. And it turns out now that God talks to everyone all the time because God lives inside of everyone all the time. Because in fact, there's no separation. No separation between divinity and humanity. That humanity is simply a demonstration of divinity.
Mhm.
It's simply an individuation of the singularity that we call God. That's my understanding. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding.
Where you, how did you feel after that night was over? Did you have the urge of sharing it? Was it a well-kept feeling secret? I mean, I think
Yes.
one thing is to experience it, but one thing is also to share with others what you felt. I mean, that
No, I didn't even dream of telling anyone else. It felt like a very sacred, personal experience. And because I was writing my questions, on the tablet, on the yellow legal pad, and I would hear answers in my mind. I would hear answers, complete, total answers. But I have to say, responses to my questions that I never dreamt of, ideas that I never thought of, especially with my Roman Catholic childhood. So but I was writing down. I wrote down everything that I want to say, hearing in my mind. And I kept a record of it. And so I was keeping this journal. This went on for many days. Every morning for weeks, I would be awakened at 4:23 in the morning, more or less, 4:30 in the morning, and I would be awakened, and I would continue with this on-paper dialogue, this conversation that I was having, question, answer, question, answer. But I never dreamt of sharing it with anybody because I thought, number one, I thought people would think that I was crazy. And there was a time when I thought, that I must be crazy. What's going on?
Yeah.
And I was a little bit frightened, a little bit scared. I thought, am I trafficking with the devil? What is this? What's going on? Finally, I got over that and I just allowed myself to have the experience, but it never occurred to me to show it to anybody, much less that millions of people around the world would one day be reading this very same dialogue that I was writing out by hand.
Right.
But I was told, here's what happened, Tobias. In the middle of the dialogue that I was experiencing, I was told, you will make of this one day a book. And you will make it accessible to many, many people around the world. And I thought, well, you know what? This is interesting. Now I have a way to prove whether what's happening or not is really true, because I realized, of course, that there wasn't one chance in a million that any publisher was going to put a book out because a guy says he's talking to God. It's not going to happen. It's a 1 in a million, never going to happen. One in a million
the
chance.
The odds are definitely where they're
1 in a million, yes. So I realized that, but here's what was interesting. When I was told you will make one day a book of this, I thought, now that's provable. Everything else I was told was conceptual. It was theoretical in nature. It was a mystical statement, but who could know whether it was true or not true? But here was a statement I was given that was measurable. I could measure the outcome. This will one day become a book. I was told directly, you will make of this a book one day. So I thought, well, we'll see about that. And I had my handwritten notes typed up and I sent them to a publisher. And you know what? They published the book.
Right away?
Instantly. I mean, within weeks when they got it. The publisher, it was a small publisher. It wasn't a major publisher, but it was one of those small publishers on the East Coast of the United States. And the publisher read it and he said, this is very interesting. We're going to put this out as a book. The only thing he said to me
lifetime also.
Yes, it changed everything. It turned that small company into a much bigger company because it sold millions of copies, 15 million copies worldwide.
Unbelievable.
And it was, in fact, ultimately translated into 37 languages.
And that was your proof that what was said was now here, present in this world. I have one more question before. The questions in the dialogue, did they evolve from these are my questions to more holistic questions of the world? I mean, I can imagine the first question was, why does it happen to me? Why did I break my neck? And then once you had the dialogue, I'm just assuming is the picture gets bigger, what you wanted to know, right?
Yes, that's exactly what happened, but it didn't happen very rapidly. I wound up writing what turned out to be 3 books worth of questions and answers. And because I just kept on writing and kept on writing, because the process was so fascinating to me. So, and the answers that I was getting were also fascinating. So yes, you're perfectly correct. As I continued with my inquiries, my questions began to be larger in scope. And I started to want to know about other things, not just, but it started exactly the way you explained. It started with all about me. What's going on in my life? Why can't I get relationships right? What can I do to earn more income? Why am I always so low on money? What's going on with my health? It seems like I've had health problems since I was a child. You know, it was all about me, all about me, all about me. And then somewhere along the line, I realized, oh, your life is not about you. Your life is about everyone else whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. And then my inquiries, as you described, began to expand and began to touch on larger issues that people all over the world are wanting to know more about.
Did you ask questions where the answer surprised you, or
Yes. Oh, many,
scared
many,
you?
many, many times. Many times. That's what made me know that the information was not coming from my own mind or coming from my own prior, knowledge or prior information, or even coming from something that I had read before, because I was receiving information that I had never seen anywhere before. In fact, some of the information that I was receiving was exactly the opposite of what I had been taught and what I had been told. For instance, as an example,
Yes.
I was told there's no such thing as the Ten Commandments, because I asked God, what do you want from me? Do you want us to obey, the Ten Commandments? And the answer that I got was, oh, sweetheart, there's no such thing as the Ten Commandments. Who would I command? You're all me. There's no one who's not a part of me. Who would I command and who would I punish if my commandments weren't kept? Would the right hand slap the left? Would I punish myself? Because you and I are one. All things are one thing. There is only one thing, and all things are part of the one thing there is. So what I was told was, for God to punish us, God would have to be punishing itself and throwing itself into hell, because there was no separation.
So there is also no heaven and hell.
No, there is no hell. There may be what we call heaven. There may be a so-called afterlife experience that to us would seem like heaven, because it's an experience in which we are able to manifest and to create, to express whatever we choose when we're in the metaphysical realm. But there is no such place as hell. And interestingly enough, even the Pope, a number of years ago, I think it was Pope John Paul II, I think it was, who said a few years ago in an encyclical that hell, as we have imagined it, does not exist. There's no such place as hell with fire and brimstone and everlasting, torture. That the Pope even said, no, that's a story that human beings made up. But the Pope did say there is the experience that's hell-like, and that's the experience of being without God, of imagining that you are without God. And that would be a hell-like experience, whether you're in this life or the afterlife. However, in the afterlife, you can't experience that because you are in the presence of the divine, even as you are in this life all the time, except in this life, we don't always remember that.
And you call her a she, right? When I read it and when I see interviews, it's God is female.
Well, God is neither.
God
is neither male nor female. So in the dialogue, the pronouns in English, he and she, were used interchangeably. In one sentence, it would be he. In the next sentence, it would be she, because God wanted me to be very clear that God has no particular identity, no specific gender, which is why, by the way, in the audio books that we had made of the dialogue, the voice of God is spoken by a man, and then by a woman, and then by a man, and then by a woman. The voice alternates between male and female voice, because we didn't want to make a statement. that God was a male or a female. So it turns out that God is not really an entity in the way that we imagine God to be, but that God is an essential essence, the pure energy that forms life itself, and therefore it's self-conscious, totally self-aware energy, the ultimate experience of total wisdom and clarity, and therefore God can take any form that God wishes. And God, I'm told in conversations with God, that God will take whatever form we will most resonate with, that we'll find it easiest to accept God in. So God will take the form that we most expect God to be. If we expect God to show up as a loving woman, a loving lady, we'll experience God in that way. Or a loving man, we'll experience God the Father. Or we might simply experience God as the pure essence of what we call a higher power, a pure energy, undifferentiated energy, like the stem cell of the universe, not yet differentiated, and that we have been given the power to formulate that energy in the way that serves us at the highest level.